Canada now has a fourth straight Liberal government, although it's a minority mandate with a new Prime Minister, Mark Carney. So what does that mean for Canada's future? We're joined by Dan McTeague. Dan served as a Liberal MP for 18 years in Ontario. He's now the President of Canadians for Affordable Energy. Many of you use Gas Wizard to check out your local gas prices. That's part of Dan's company as well. So good to have you with us, Dan.
Always a pleasure to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, lots to talk about, of course. Wow. Were you surprised by the election results at all? Were you expecting something closer or further apart?
Well, I think it was very close in terms of numbers, a lot closer than pollsters had suggested. But it's the breakdown. This time it wasn't as efficient for the Liberals as it has been in the past. And though they wound up with 168, 169, they fell short of that majority that many people thought was a slam dunk. And the Conservatives did extraordinarily well, despite everything, and having the Praetorian Guard against them. And by that, the media, the pollsters, Donald Trump, Doug Ford here in Ontario, all coming out to really whack them. I mean, the reality is that they held up pretty damn good, considering everything that had been pitted against them. And of course, we now know that where we began back in February with the Liberal leadership, when everything seemed to go away, and Mark Carney was given the coronation, and Canadians seem to, at least here in Eastern Canada, seem to have done the same, with the exception of Lower Mainland BC. We're going to resume exactly where we left off in February, and it's a very grim
Hmm.
future,
So
like
you're
it or
not,
not.
yeah. So you're not thinking, you're not buying the, I guess the mantra you're hearing. This is change now. You're saying, yeah, it's going to kind of continue the way it has over the last 10 years. Sounds like. Um, well, let me ask you this, I guess, first before we get into some of that. What did the Liberals do right? Like, I mean, how did they get this win? Was it the Trump, orange hair bad man guy?
Yeah, I think the Conservatives have to be prepared for the Liberals going forward. Can always, deceive Canadians, and can always get gullible types to go along with COVID in 2021. Bad Orange Man bad south of the border in 2025. I'm sure they'll probably find another boogeyman out there for the next election. That's if the election is on their terms and they can determine when that's going to happen. And they have another Jagmeet Singh to help them along to ensure that they have all the things going against them. But I suspect they're running out of options. One, because I think for a lot of people, especially here in Eastern Canada, the tough times are here. And you don't take my word for it. A Fitch rating agency is saying they're about to downgrade our credit. That should send a signal to every Canadian who thought that this is all about Donald Trump. No, it's about bad economic policy here in Canada, and we're about to double down on it.
Yeah, and now that brings up another interesting question as well. What did the Conservatives do wrong? Of course, Poilievre being criticized by other Conservatives that hey, you missed it, and of course he stuck to his gun, saying this is about our economy, it's about jobs, affordable homes, all these kinds of things, right? But rather than focusing on the tariffs and Trump more as Carney did, did he drop the ball there?
I don't think he dropped the ball. I think he said what he had to say, and he pushed back on what was the Praetorian Guard of people with vested interests. Look, when you have media, and I'm not, picking anybody out or singling out anyone in particular, paid by the government to promote the government's approach. The past 10 years, I've been fighting affordability. It is now the most important issue in Canada, but you had everybody falling, all foursquare for the net zero and all of its damage. And I'm not just talking, of course, about carbon taxes, which Liberals finally realized they had to get rid of temporarily, because it's coming back in the form of an industrial carbon tax. And anybody who thought that was gone should think again. I think there's other factors here that are going to be extraordinarily aggravating for Canadians as they start to unpackage what's happened. We have an EV mandate in Canada. We have EV building, battery building, which is going bankrupt. It's going insolvent. These are white elephants, and the cost of keeping those, maintaining those very costly, very damaging policies, part of net zero, is now to see China hit back and hit our canola farmers out west, and seafood farmers, seafood producers in Eastern Canada. Others. So no, I don't see this. I don't see much reprieve. There's not much more left in the bag for the Liberals to pull out and to try to bamboozle people into this idea that everything's just fine. Now they face the harsh reality of what some of them voted for, and a lot of them aren't prepared for the pain.
Yeah, I wonder how long it'll take for that to kind of reality to settle in, when the bills pile up, right? So, yeah, yeah, right. There you go. Yes.
They're funding the taxes. If they haven't filed them already, then they're going to start to
Mm.
pay interest, and it'll be big.
Yeah, well, again, there were some tax cuts, from the Liberals here. Are they enough to actually make a difference? Time will tell, I guess. But let me ask you this: I think it's unlikely, but is there going to be any internal pressure coming from the Conservative Party to replace Poilievre? Right? I mean, could be. If not, what are his options on a by-election?
Well, I think this. I look at this a little differently. Those who have ambitions to take him out and are going to have to come up with someone who's just as strong, just as committed, just as determined, and is willing to face the same slate of hand that the Liberals seem to be able to produce. And I know a lot about that party. I served for 40, 45 years. Half of that as a member of parliament, some of that even as a privy councillor, minister. But the reality, I think, is that's going to come forth is: are you prepared to make a 4-year sacrifice in order to do that? Because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of abandonment of your family, of your interests. It takes a certain type of individual to do that, and I think the interlopers may have, especially, and I say, with all due regards, respect, Doug Ford played his hand. If that was his intention, he completely muffed it up, because it's now he's got a fish or cut bait. Does he want to spend 4 years as premier, or does he want to spend 4 years in opposition?
Hmm. All right. Yeah. That. Okay. Yeah. Doug Ford. Some people say he's got ambitions to become prime minister. So who knows where that'll go? But were you surprised at all by Poilievre's? I mean, pretty much a major loss. I think it was like 4,000 votes, something like that, in his home riding. He's been there since what, 2004 or something like that. I mean, like what? Like what? So how did that happen?
Well, unless people are brain dead in Carleton, where the K stands for quality. I like to say that Carleton, where the K stands for quality. A lot of federal civil servants, a lot of
Okay.
grifters there, a lot of
Mm.
mooching, a lot of who have need government money. If you don't have a productive side of the economy is faltering. We don't have Alberta producing oil and gas and expanding so that they can then send the money to Ottawa so they can spend on the civil servants. You're going to have a tough time going ahead. But I guess that's more my overall comment that I would make
Okay.
as any observer who's had some political experience. My bigger concern: how did 91 people wind up on a ballot sheet?
Yeah.
Second of all, how do you get nearly 100% turnout? There's a lot to be said about, we can go and say he shouldn't have lost. Here's why. And I think there's a lot of suspicion here, but there's also, it gives ground and rise to the idea that there is certainly a conspiracy in Canada to be able to do certain things. We've seen electoral interference. It's
Mm-hmm.
not to be played with. It's not to be joked about. And one wonders if that's exactly what happened here. I don't know, but I'm not closing the door to any of that.
Okay. Well, I'm sure somebody will investigate it. Well, maybe not, but well, we'll see. All right. Jagmeet Singh, we touched on him earlier. Okay, he's resigned. Well, he will, I guess, whenever they find an interim leader here. Where did he drop the ball? What do the NDP need to do differently? Who's going to lead it? Can they bounce back, or are we basically a two-party nation now?
I think we're heading to two-party nation. I don't think the NDP is relevant at all. Probably hasn't been since 2015, when the Liberals outflanked them and moved further to the left on some of the major issues. They're no longer a party of Labor. We know the Conservatives, federally, provincially, have picked up the hardworking union support across this country. So if we're dealing with civil service, public sector unions, that may be their only hope, but that actually went to the Liberals. So there's not much left for the NDP. They played the game, and they lost. They played poker, and propped up the Liberals, and as a result, more than Liberals weren't punished. Ostensibly, it was the NDP, who, in many cases, most of their candidates didn't just wind up going from, coming in second. Many of them went up in third, including Jagmeet Singh. So, you know, you you mess with the bull, you get the horn. I think the NDP's realized it's game over for the NDP since its formation in 1961.
Yeah, it would take somebody really, really dynamic and strong to turn things around there, and maybe some policy changes. But all right. Well, we
Liberals
gotta
will
go ahead. Ah,
Liberals will screw them up first.
hmm. Well, we have a new prime minister, Mark Carney. Some happy people and some not so happy campers. So he's saying unity is a priority. Ah, man, we've got a lot of this going on. Any thoughts on? I mean, realistically, can that happen? Can he bring some sort of unity? What would he have to do to do that?
Well, he'd have to shed, his wolf in sheep's clothing. This is a man who has very much been a part of the international effort, global effort, WEF, or whether it's the UN's representative on pushing things like GFANs, around the world, getting financial institutions not to invest money in oil and gas, which the world cannot survive without. Certainly, Canada economically cannot survive without. Um, this is an individual who has, swallowed the whole idea of the 15-minute cities and made it very clear that he wants to continue with some form of carbon tax. This is a fellow who obviously has no trouble with EV mandates. This is an individual who is really the prince of net zero, and whether we like it, he is hardwired for this kind of policy, which is extraordinarily, and I would say foursquare, aimed at undermining the Canadian economy. And I don't just mean the West. I think even here in Ontario, we're now starting to realize. Paul, you and I talked about the failure of so many of these electric vehicle plants that we've put so much money in and thought there'd be a great future for them. I'm not here to be down on new technologies, but when you're proposing things that don't work in Canada, including electrification, which would cost us trillions of dollars, when you're looking at $62 billion in national deficits and accumulation of debt, which is near $3 trillion between the federal and provincial governments, we have a spending problem, and we also have a growth problem in this country, being the lowest, GDP per capita of the OECD. And now, of course, the report by the PCO. By the way, I'm Dan McTeague, PC, Honorable Dan McTeague, PC, Privy Councillor. I know what the Privy Council has written, and that document that was released that says Canada is facing the possibility of collapse by 2040. I hope that's not the case, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen a lot sooner than 2040. And I think we have, it's going to take more than Mark Carney and his vision of the things that have been very detrimental to the country to get us. We've gone in the wrong direction here. And at the worst possible time, my view, unless he's changed himself 180%, I don't see that happening. The worst possible guy to elect at the worst possible time.
Yeah, yeah, it was that particular, I think, Horizons report, yeah, again, from the Privy Council, essentially, right? I mean, this is not, I think a lot of people think, okay, this is a bunch of conservatives who wrote this.
Yeah.
But no, this is a mixture. There's different party representatives on the Privy Council. I mean, these are not dumb people.
No.
They know their stuff. I mean, should we be taking this report seriously?
Very seriously. Anything from the PCO, you always take seriously. It's the arm of the federal government, although it's maybe a study and advice. It's the stuff that ministers are given to read. They're required to read this stuff as a possibility, as a potential. We don't want it to happen, and it's not un-Canadian to point it out and say we dismiss these things out of hand. We've fallen a long way in the past 10 years, like it or not, on almost every front. Whether people call that broken or they call that, just fear mongering, the reality is that no one in this country feels that the way things are today are as good as they were 10 years ago. And so take the partisanship out of this. The PCO is not a partisan body.
Yep.
For them to have such a document, for that document to have been released by whoever released it, I think is a take note moment. It's a stand up moment. And I think we need to understand we're in an awful lot of trouble in this country. And if we go down the same road we've been on for the past 10 years, which the Liberals represent, continuity of bad policy, well, it'll take more than just Orange Man bad south of the border to take advantage of our weakness when we've weakened ourselves.
Yeah, words, I mean, in one sense matter, but when it comes down to this particular, economic issue, it's going to take more than words. It's going to take some change in policy here to attract investment to Canada again. Energy superpower, we're hearing that from our Prime Minister. But, what's it going to take to get there? Obviously, some things need to change to create an environment for people to come say, yes, we want to buy your oil and your gas and so forth. Pipeline might be really, really helpful. Is that going to happen? Considering the direction we're headed in right now, and doesn't look like it's likely to change, the EV mandate by 2035, all new vehicles must be EVs. Really? That's 10 years away. Come on.
Yeah. Well, my 12-year-old vehicle that I'm driving right now is going to be around another 20 years by the looks of it. Get a good mechanic, and Canada could look a whole lot more like, I don't know, Cuba, with older vehicles driving around as people can't afford, nor do they want to drive something that's inefficient. Let me say something about pipelines. The Liberals try to do what they did to the carbon tax, realizing after 8 years of pushing this down our throats and forcing us to pay a lot more and having the effect of driving up food prices and everything else, Liberals actually believe that by building more pipelines, you can get more oil and gas to the market. Not if you have an emissions cap. They are absolutely committed to an emissions cap. So you're going to build pipelines if you can get them through with nothing in them, with a one-third reduction. This doesn't make sense. And the Liberals are going to have to deal with this contradiction of policy that they have been advocating. And Mark Carney is really the king of this stuff. I called him a prince earlier, but he is really the king of promoting the net zero policies on strangulating the oil and gas sector, which might be nice if you're trending, you hate the industry, and you're living in a bubble. But if you're a Canadian politician, or you're looking at the treasury, or you're looking at the finances of the country, you kill the oil industry and the gas industry in this country, you might as well say goodbye to the Federation, because there won't be any money to put around. When 20 to $30 billion, 12% of our GDP depends on this, it's we're playing with fire.
Yeah, this is a reality. I mean, if you can't buy a home, if you can't find a job, people are going to get upset pretty quick here. So we'll see what happens here. Real briefly, any thoughts again on how the Conservatives can become dance partners with the Bloc? How long do you think the minority government will last, and what'll bring it down potentially?
Well, I think it's no more than 2 years, and I think Conservatives should stick to their knitting, stick to their programs, stick to their agenda. The economy is falling to pieces, and even those who were just basically dissuaded from voting Conservative may have second thoughts in the not too distant future.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, Dan. Always good chatting with you.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Paul.